Welcome to this class on environmental analysis and the final implementation plan. So this is the final part of our technical analysis investigation. Just to recap, we dealt with production and product issues for 4 classes. Then we have considered the human resources aspects and the overhead costs, as well as the site and location issues. And at the end of our discussion about the technical analysis, we're dealing with the environmental impact of all these proposed solutions. The outline, as we will see, is quite rich, since we have to consider different elements impacting on the environmental sustainability of the project itself. We will start with the consideration of several points to ponder. Then we will deal with the idea of the clean production. So, related to this point, we will see that we have clean technologies, and when these clean technologies are embodied in production schemes, then we might lead to clean production. As a third step, we will deal with the idea of the EIA, Environmental Impact Analysis, concept and process. Then we will deal with the necessity of an implementation facilities plan. So we have a recalling word here, plan, which means that also the environmental related aspects need to be planned carefully within the project. And as a last point, we will deal with the necessity of a cost budgeting. So currently, what we've seen so far, we have the idea of planning of activities and the cost estimation of these aspects. Let's start with the points to ponder. Environmental analysis. Let's start with some preliminary considerations. The environment of an investment project consists of the land, air, and water bodies in the vicinity of the project. The flora and the fauna that inhabit the surroundings, and the social, economic, and political systems in which people function. So, starting from this definition, it's pretty clear that what we are going to consider is an ecosystem surrounding the project itself. So the environmental analysis, as we will see, includes all the different impacts and fall downs that the project itself is emitting into the external environment, considered from a natural way. So, the first point to ponder is the environmental protection in the industry. So, from one industry to another, we might find different regulations or different areas of attention when it comes to the environment protection. So, those elements might be embedded in the product design, meaning that long-lasting products, for example, might be exposed to minimize plant obsolescence. So the point is that the longer is the life of the product, the higher is the chance that such a product do not require to be wasted or do not become a refuse. Product design for recycling. Now, we're familiar with the fact that a product embeds some technology, but we're familiar also with the concept that the product itself is the transformation of raw materials into final goods or into delivery of final services. Now, the design might be compliant with the environmental regulations too, in terms of the usage of certain raw materials, recyclable ones, for example. The processing might be coherent with the final annihilation of the product itself. So the product design is another relevant element of the environmental impact of the project itself. Further, always related to product design, we have material and energy saving design. So if you consider the automotive industry, all over the world, the attention is both on using recyclable components and on reducing the consumption of fuels and other sources of energies like electricity, for example. Use of environmental sound materials. So in different industries, we have different components of raw materials that may be recycled and become the same component of a different layer. So in a car, for example, when we use some plastic elements, those plastic elements may be recycled in the way that during their second life they may be installed in a second lower layer which is not visible by customers, and once this element is recycled again, it could be used as a part of the engine or whatever part of the inner side of the car. So the use of environmental sound materials is related to the fact that within the same product we might have different components, and the very same component could be recycled several times and become another component of the same product. So different ages of life for the same component. It's not only the product design, it's also the technology selection. So again, technology is knowledge embodied into an artifact. So the very same product or service could be delivered by obtained and delivered by using different material and energy saving technology. So for example, different products might gain different certifications according to the fact that during the production process the company is able to employ alternative technologies for a cleaner way of obtaining the same product, as we will see. And then the clean technologies are meant as the benchmark in terms of most efficient and effective usage of resources. When it comes to the environmental protection in the industry, it's also about the waste utilization. So conversion of waste, meaning that the waste of a specific production could be reemployed in other different production cycles, or could be eliminated by referring to environmental friendly technologies. And then we have deneutralization of waste, which is the decomposition of the waste. So it's a kind of reuse on this sense, and it's just dismissal on this sense. So when it comes to waste disposal, we have elimination, dilution, storage, and incineration. So in order to obtain a physical dismantling of the waste, we might dispose it according to different technologies. Each alternative has a different impact on the environment, both in the long run and in the short run and in the long run. So it's a choice about economic cost and benefits analysis when it comes to the different alternatives on disposal. Additional environmental issues might be enlightened by answering to these questions. The first one is environmental and socioeconomic conditions at the proposed plant site, effects of project on these conditions. So here we have the socioeconomic conditions, considering the wide range of of perimeter that the environment might be associated to. And here we have the effects of our project on those conditions. Further, ecological impacts acceptable under existing environmental regulations. So this is another idea that we should be familiar with. If we consider different areas or different countries, the very same project might be compliant or controversially accepted considering the local regulations. Extra regulatory impacts acceptable short and long term. So here we have the distinction between the short and long term, meaning that different technologies or different alternatives might impact in a differentiated way according to the time span that we're taking in consideration, as well as we have the extra regulatory kind of engagement, meaning that the company or the project could decide on a spontaneous basis to invest in technologies which are more advanced or more effective in terms of environmental protection than the ones which are mandatory by the law. So this element is closely related to what we call the social responsibility of the company. So sometimes companies are investing more than required by the law in the development of alternative technologies in order to be more friendly, more respectful of the external environment. Within the preliminary considerations and the points to ponder, we should get familiar with some specific technology as well. And the technology is about the way that the companies are dealing with these environmental issues. So, specific terms, specific processes, specific models could be adopted. So, namely, when it comes to the terminology, which is one element of this technology, on the environmental impact assessment, EIA, we have the environment, which is the surrounding conditions of the company. We have the ecology, which is the acceptance that this environmental system is alive, so it has to be preserved in the long run. The environmental impact, which is the fact that whatever project is absorbing resources and it's kind of interfering with the inhabitants of such an environment. Then we have the environmental impact assessment, and then we need to consider the environmental impact statement. So once we have assessed the impact of the investment on the environment, we have to state what the expected actions and results are. And then we have the preliminary environmental examination, so the PEE, which is a phase which is crucial for the physical installation of the activities. So once we got familiar with the terminology, we should get deeper into the impact of the investment on the environment. So the first idea we're going to recall is the idea of clean production. Clean production, as defined by the UN Environmental Programme, might be defined as a continuous application of integrated preventive environmental strategy to processes and products to reduce risks to human and the environment. So, we might highlight different elements of this definition, which are very meaningful for our goal and are very meaningful considering the scope of our investigation. Application should be continuous. So the environmental programs should not be considered as extemporary, but should be part of a systematic activities. The application, it's about an environmental strategy which again recalls the idea of having some objectives and some specific plans of actions for such objectives. And it has to be integrated and preventive. So it's an ex-ante analysis and ex-ante estimation of what actions are actually needed. To processes and products. So it's both manufacturing and the outputs of these manufacturing, in order to reduce risks to human and the environment. So at the end, we have the reduction of the risk of dangerous emissions and impacts both for humans and the natural environments. So now we have two managerial considerations. The first one is grow first and clean up later. This is the kind of sponsors approach. So sometimes sponsors are very demanding in terms of expected results or are very pushy in terms of promoting the activities related to the project. So the idea of grow first and clean up later, it's an old-fashioned idea which has accompanied all the company's development for the last 50 years. The point is that this strategy has seemed to be detrimental for the company's results and outcomes in the long run. So, in a more modern way, managers approach the choices of technology according to this other motto: clean technology is good business. So by preventing pollutions, for example, company could develop and nurture their own sustainable advantage over time. So the dominating hypothesis is the adoption of clean technology on the premises, and then to realize that it was a good business choice. Let's consider the Environmental Impact Assessment, EIA, or analysis that might be labeled as well, concept and process. So the Environmental Impact Assessment, EIA, considers different elements that we are very familiar with so far. First one is the material flow balances, quantities and qualities. So during the production plan activities and considering the production program, we have dealt with the idea of having a material flow balance and other operational impacts. So we have seen already that we should balance the materials, the energy consumptions, and so on. So we have different elements that we consider as inputs for our project, and we should consider the environmental impact of all of them. Further, we have legal and regulatory basis for the evaluation. So again, we have some standards which are mandatory considering the location and the industry in which the company is operating, in which the project is going to be developed. As well as we have some elective activities that we've seen that the company could choose to adopt in terms of standards. And then we have to perform baseline study and to state and assess the environmental status quo. The environmental impact assessment is also about further elements. Incremental influences on the environment. So if we consider the previous situation, we should consider what the further development of activities would mean for the environment in terms of impact. The mitigation measures, so if we found out that our activity is going to have a negative impact on the environment, we should plan what the mitigation measures would be. The cost-benefit analysis, which is crucial for assessing the eventual and potential returns of our investments in clean technologies or other environmentally friendly solutions. And at the end, we should develop an environmental plan. So, consistently with what we have seen so far for the rest of the activities, we should end up with a plan and a cost analysis. So again, the same scheme of considering cost and benefits on one hand and planning the current and the consistent activities on the other hand, it's present on this environmental analysis too. What is very important to consider is the link between the assessment of the environmental impact and the pre-feasibility study. So we have EIA on one hand and feasibility study on the other hand. We start from the opportunity study and the pre-feasibility study that we are familiar already with, and additionally we consider the PEE, the preliminary environmental examination. The combined consideration of both these elements lead to the review screen decision. So the review screen decision could lead to different scenarios. On one hand, we might find out that the environmental impact assessment is required, and consistently the decision will lead to the environmental impact assessment as an actual activity, and later to the interim reports, the preparation of the environmental impact statement, EIS, and finally the decision about what to do in terms of actions for carrying out the investment itself. On the other specular scenario, we have that the environmental impact assessment is not a requirement. So after the pre-feasibility study, we end up with a feasibility study, and we might either end up with a decision or go through the interim reports and again the preparation of the environmental impact statement, the EIS. So this picture here helps us compare different phases within the investment project layout, as well as to activate important links between these different phases. If we go deeper in the basic structure of the EIA, we might explore the existing environment, the project impacts, and again the project impacts after the mitigation measures. So this is the incremental effect of the environmental impact considering the measures. So we might consider this as a final and ultimate results of the environmental choices. So impacts during each phase: planning, implementation, operations, decommissioning. In terms of linkages of project with natural and socio-economic environment. It's very important to point out in such a scheme that the decommissioning, as we've seen already, it's a crucial phase in the investment analysis, which is not only about planning, implementation, and operations, which is the construction part and the structuring part of the project, but it's also the destructuration of the project itself, meaning the decommissioning. And then we should distinguish between recurring and non-recurring effects, meaning that some effects might be stable and recurring in the project, whereas some effects might be exceptional or just associated with certain probabilities in the project itself. This is the basic structure of the environmental impact assessment. Then we have also the process of such analysis. So when it comes to process, we have a linear structure of activities here, which is the project, the PEE scoping, the full EIA, project design, project implementation, project operation. So this is just the introduction of environmental related aspects within the general sequence of the project. here we have decisions to be taken. So we have a public, which is influencing the decisions of the company and which is influencing the cognitive schemes of the decisions of the project. And then we might refer to different decision criteria. So for each phase, which are spanning through this insert of environmental impact, we might have different public opinions or different public pressures and different decision criteria. What is not so uncommon in different industries or within different areas is to be exposed to different publics and receiving different pressures. So, to some extent, for a certain part of the society, for certain stakeholders, anti-pollution measures may be more important than social protections, and the other way around. So we have the structure, we have the process. Let's deal with the EIA activities. So here we have a short list of what to do in terms of environmental impact assessment. Describe, measure, analyze, interpret, evaluate, and communicate. So we have a process which is very similar to the process related to budgeting, with the only difference that the focus is totally concentrated on the environmental impact. So we have a description, measurement, and analysis of what the impact of the company's activities are on the external environment. And then we have an internal part of the process, which is the interpretation and evaluation of such phenomena, as well as the communication. This part is becoming more and more important for the project deployment, meaning that since we have different actors, sponsors, other investors, and other actors interested in the success of the project itself, communication towards all these shareholders, it's a crucial part of the acceptance of the project within the community and within the social environment that we're considering. So, the extent of the environmental impacts might be local when it's related to the production side, and it's extended to the adjacent areas as well. Or it might be regional when it's considering the downstream, which is the combination of the value chains in the distribution phase of our products, as well as the lean direction. So it's a consideration of the supply chain and its geographical distribution to some extent. To another level, we have the global extent of the environmental impacts, considering the atmosphere, the oceans, and the other natural resources which are globally considered. So it's not only about the kind of shareholders or stakeholders that we're exposed to. It's not only about the level of confidence that those actors have with the environmental themes. It's also about the consideration of the local, regional, and global environments. And at each level, we might find different levels of attentions about different items, from the local development, the rural area, to the pollution of the ocean, for example. When it comes to methods, the EIA may occur by referring to different methods. So we have tailor-made solutions, ad hoc solutions. We might have checklists, similarly to the quality programs, matrices intercepting responsibilities and activities and objectives, overlays that we will explore momentarily, networks that I'll show you in a few minutes, and extended cost-benefit analysis that we'll deal with too. So The first three methods are similar to the ones we have already dealt with, and the latter three are more specific for this kind of analysis. So then we have modeling and system analysis, which are the combination of different elements and the elaboration of proper models for the environmental impact. So when it comes to the overlays, it's a graphical description of different areas. So, for example, if we have the project activities in terms of footprint, the blue areas, and we consider the overlays between these footprint activities and the other natural resources, watershed, prime agricultural land, built-up areas, and so on. So according to the color that the different areas are going to be depicted by, it's possible to see what is the impact of our installations on the natural environment. Considering the different emissions of the different facilities, it's possible to see and assess the impact on these different resources. When it comes to networks, a network is the organized destructuration of the environmental impact. So we might have the project activities, and we might decompose these project activities into construction, administration, and production. And for each of these activities, we might have this kind of tree depicting sub-activities like site preparation within construction, as well as like smelting and refining within production. And for each of these sub-activities, we might have the impact on the natural environment. So here we might have wetlands coming out the site preparation, which is within the construction, as well as here we might have SO2 emissions coming out of smelting, which is within the production. So considering the nodes of these networks depicted by all these orange figures here, we might have the decomposition of the impact onto the environment related to the activities of our project. Cost-effective analysis of EIA is another powerful tool, it's another method for conducting such analysis. So here on the x-axis we have the cost of the environmental impact assessment, and here we have the benefits of such activity. So we might have this threshold level here, which is the association in our example of 20% of the cost of the environmental impact associated with the 80% of the benefit of the environmental impact. If we consider different points, here we have a low cost and a low impact, whereas here we have a higher cost which is associated with a differential lower impact in terms of benefits. So it would be possible to consider an optimal size, an optimal scale for the environmental impact as well. So we have deepened the analysis considering these three methods, which are very familiar in the practice of environmental impact assessment. Now we have to deal with the necessity of an implementation facilities plan. So, as we were saying, the planning activities are crucial for the success of the investment in general, and they might be included in environmental analysis too. During the planning stage, before the commitment to invest, a preliminary implementation plan is useful to the analysts and stakeholders for costing purpose. So, this area should be included in the preliminary phases and should accompany the planning stage of the activities. Another important element, and this is the last item that we're dealing with today, it's the necessity of cost budgeting. So similarly to many other phases that we have dealt with, cost budgeting is about the estimate of investment cost project implementation. So the list is item, number, quantity, unit, and the distinction between local and foreign, and the unit cost. So again, this is a recursive scheme. We have the list or the checklist to be implemented, and then we have a domain of application. In such a case, the domain of application is made of management of project implementation, engineering in terms of detailed design, tendering, supervision, test run, coordination. So all these activities could be based on the choice of different technologies. And according to the technologies which is embedded in the process and in the products, we might have different impacts on the natural environment and on the social environment as well. Further, recruitment and training of staff and labor. So the adoption of specific technology and models implies some requirements in terms of competencies and skills, and considering different alternatives, we might have different competencies and skills required, as well as the procurement of supplies. So supplies and suppliers may be specific or consistent in terms of raw materials and services with the technology and the solutions that the company is choosing. Then we have marketing system development, development of business connections, and takeover of civil works, equipment, and plant. So far, it's quite clear that the choices that the company makes around the environmental impact have a massive influence on the external network of the company as well. But we have some financial implications too. So capital issue expenses. So green technologies or clean technologies might be more expensive than the traditional ones, and financial costs during construction. So utilization of specific raw materials might be more expensive or less expensive of traditional ones. So we are about to conclude this part of the technical analysis, which is the final one of the environmental impact of the investment. What is very important to consider is the fact that if we add this environmental sensitivity to the project analysis, then we might need to implement additional formulas and additional estimations in our cost-benefit analysis. So this is the last part for the technical analysis, and the technical analysis is the final part of this module in which we have considered all the aspects which are related to the market, operational, and product-related elements of the investment project. As usual, you might refer to the website for further information and additional resources. Thank you.